All right. All right, so now we will start with the lacing on the piece. So lacing is something that you always have to do it at the end of the pot life. So let me just tell you a few things before we start with the lacing. So see, every resin, whatever resin is available in the market, whether it is 3:1, 2:1, 1:1, other type of resin, all the resin, they go through different stages before it finally becomes like a glass. Okay, as you can see here. So what are the different stages of resin that goes through? First stage is known as the pot life of the resin. So basically what happens when you mix the resin and the hardener in a cup, so how much time you have in hand to work with this solution, that is known as the pot life of your resin. It will be mentioned on the bottle that you purchase, whether the pot life is 20 minutes, it is 45 minutes, 1 hour, whatever it is, it will be mentioned on the bottle. It varies from brand to brand. Okay, the second stage of resin is touch dry state. So after you done the pouring, your resin will come to a stage where it is touch dry. Okay, as in if you touch it from the finger, nothing will come on your finger. Sometime there might be some fingerprints, that is completely fine. That stage usually comes after like 2-3 hours or 4 hours, depending on brand to brand. The third stage of the resin is known as the full curing stage, when the resin is full like a solid kind of a material. So that stage is known as full curing stage. So when you do the lacing, when you start doing the lacing, initially what happens, your resin and hardener is in a very unstable condition. It's very liquidy. Slowly it will start becoming thicker and little more thicker, then little more thicker, and finally becoming like a full solid state. So what happens, initially resin is liquidy. So if you create any sort of pattern, so lacing is something, these thing, the white wave thing that you can see, this is known as lacing. So if you create any lacing at the initial stage of resin, what happens, it will dissolve. वो आपस में mix हो जाएगा. Whatever you will create, it will dissolve. So what you have to do, you have to wait for your resin to at least become little tacky, little more like a honey kind of a consistency. So when the honey reaches that consistency, it is more stable. So whatever pattern you will create, it will remain as it is. Nothing will just go here and there. So pot life, suppose your brand says the pot life is 45 minutes, then you will start with the lacing thing at around 35 minutes to 40 minutes. Okay, you can mix the resin, keep it aside, or you can pour the resin on the surface, but you have to wait for at least 40 minutes before you start off with the working thing. So for your resin, the resin that we are using in the session, this resin is a pouring resin from the brand the Epoxy, and it is in the ratio of 2:1. That is, suppose you're taking 50 ml, then you have to add half the quantity of 50, that will be like 25 ml. So this particular thing have a pot life of approximately 25 minutes to 30 minutes. Okay, so you will be doing the lacing thing when we create the pattern at around 20-25 minutes only. Before that, if you start and create it, it won't work. If you wait for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, then your resin will become tacky. It will be too tough to spread, too tough to create the wave. So the right time for creating the laces is the end of the pot life. Understood? Now whenever you pour another layer on the piece, जैसे अभी हमने एक layer कर लिया है, now we are pouring another layer on the piece. So you always have to wait until your first layer is at least touch dry. Touch dry के बाद you can leave it for 10 days also, and after that you can work, but not before touch dry. So you have to wait for your first layer to be at least touch dry before you pour another layer of resin on top of the piece. Got it? So depending on how much depth you want in the piece, you want like a lot of depth, then you can add on multiple layers and layers and layers and layers of the resin. If you are satisfied with the first lacing that you have done, you can just leave the piece as it is. Okay, so this is how you create the laces at the right time. Now there is one more rule of creating the waves or the lacing, that is the right quantity of the pigment. Okay, so when we create the laces, we take approximately 15% of whatever resin you have. Okay, so generally what happens, for the white we hardly need like one line here and one line here, so approximately 1 teaspoon of resin we need, correct? So 15% of 1 teaspoon we need to add the white pigment. So I'll tell you the quantity, I'll show you, and then we'll start with the lacing thing. Make sure your surface is set on a level surface. It should not have any sort of deviation, ये नहीं कि कहीं से टेढ़ा है, so everything will just flow in that direction. Okay, so make sure your piece is all leveled, and you can wear the hand gloves and start mixing the resin and hardener. So now we are doing one more coat on top of this, so we require approximately, let's say 75 in total, sorry 70 in total, 75 in total. So we will take 50 resin and 25 hardener, 50 ml resin, 25 ml hardener, just like how you have done in your previous session. So again you will be taking out one transparent cup, your measuring cup, and add resin accordingly. So this is the resin we are using, the epoxy resin 2:1. So I'm taking 75 in total, so approximately 50. So I'm weighing it with a measuring scale. Okay, so 50 resin, 50 grams resin, 50 ml resin, both are fine. And in that you need to add 25 ml of the hardener. So I've added 25 ml of hardener in that. After this we need ice cream sticks. Please make sure you're wearing the hand gloves. I have a solution to take out the resin from my hand, so that is why I avoid sometimes wearing the gloves. Okay, now what you have to do is you have to mix the solution again. So as you can see, it's quite transparent right now, but when I start mixing the solution, it turns into a translucent kind, right? So you have to again mix the solution until you get a nice clear solution again. At this stage your resin will have a lot of bubbles, so that is completely fine. So just mix the solution until you have a nice clear solution. Now whenever you mix resin, do not mix it too fast. Okay, you have to mix it properly, aram se, from all the sides. You take the resin like that, from the bottom you mix it like that. So until your solution is transparent again, you have to keep on stirring the solution well. As you can see, it is turning transparent again. Can you see that? So now as you can see, it is a transparent liquid with some bubbles in it, so that is completely fine. Now what you have to do is, from this solution, as I've said कि हमें lacing सिर्फ 2 points पे करनी है, so we hardly need white approximately 1 teaspoon. So what you will do, you will transfer 1 teaspoon of resin and hardener solution in a paper cup, or you can take a plastic cup, whichever is fine. Okay, so I'm just gonna add 1 teaspoon of resin in a paper cup. Can you see that? It's very less in quantity, and remaining I'm going to keep little bit like that, and then we will add some more pigment in this. So for the white pigment, we are using the white pigment again from the brand the epoxy. Okay, because I buy in bulk, so he doesn't give me with the labels and all. Okay, so this is again from the brand the epoxy, the same pigment that you guys have. What you have to do is, you need to take, I'll show you the quantity. So quantity as per 1 teaspoon. Okay, if your quantity of resin is, let's say 5 ml, then you will be adding 1.5 ml of the white pigment. Okay, so it will be always in the ratio of 15%. So this is the white lacing pigment, you can say. It is in a paste form and it gives you a opaque feel. It gives you a opaque finish to the piece. So in 1 teaspoon of resin, you need to add approximately 1/4 teaspoon, you can say. So that much you need to add the white pigment. Got it? Yeah. And that you have to add in 1 teaspoon of resin. Just mix the solution well. So when you start mixing, if the pigments are nice, they will mix easily. Okay, as you can see here. But some brands, they don't offer you a great quality of the pigment, so it will take, you know, really long to mix the pigment. So just buy the quality products. Okay, so this is, as you can see, it's a very nice and bright white pigment. Okay, now what we will be doing is keep this aside and take out your piece. Make sure there's no extra chira or something like that on the piece. So what you have to do now is in the front side, over this area, you will be pouring the transparent resin, because it's easier to create lacing on a transparent resin. It's more clear. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just taking the transparent resin and I'm just pouring it like that in a curvish way, like so. Okay, and one wave I'm going to do here. If you want, you can take it a little bit on the sand also. And after this, in this cup itself, I'm just gonna add little bit of the drop wala pigment. So just adding a drop of that. Okay, so this will add on some depth in your piece. What you have to do now is take the thing, pour it on the piece, only on the back side where you want the color to have a darker tone. You can take a little bit further also if you want. So this is known as layering. When you add layers and layers and layers of resin, it is known as layering. Okay, so you just mix this thing like that. Now to pop out these bubbles, you can either use isopropyl alcohol or you can heat it up with a heat gun or a butane torch just to get rid of the bubbles. But do not overheat the piece, otherwise it will start turning yellow. Okay, so let me just show you how you use a butane torch. Okay, so this is a butane torch. Okay, I know it's little ganda, but works. So on this, you can see a on and lock ka switch. So you always have to push it towards on. Down me, you can see this tiny lever. Okay, make sure it is on the plus side. And this, if you press and hold, your torch will turn on. So as you can see, this is somewhere the start of the flame and somewhere here is the end of the flame. What you have to do is you have to make sure the end touches the resin. So to get rid of any bubble, what you have to do is run around the piece with the butane torch like that. Okay, So as you can see, there is no bubble now. Yeah, and it will settle and give you a nice neat finish. Now what we have to do is we have to wait for this thing to at least reach the end of the pot life, then only we can do the lace. So switch on the heat gun or the hair dryer, turn it on. As you can see, slowly the cells are starting to form on the area. Now if at all at this stage your cells don't form, okay, even after heating or anything, that means your resin has reached the end of the pot life. In that case, you can heat it up additionally with a butane torch. Okay, so what do you do? Switch on the butane torch, heat it up like this. Suppose I want to do some more prominent wave on that edge, so I'm just gonna pour a layer white again. Heat it up. And then if you want more prominent waves, heat it up with a butane torch. And then what you have to do is just define the waves. So you can take the white pigment, go it inwards like that. Touch it to the end. And slowly it will take the shape. You can just do one of this one and one of this one, not needed to have one more on the back side, depending on how you want your piece to be. So I have this piece and I'm showing you how to do the moss thing and how do you write the name and how do you finish up your piece. So you have two different type of mosses. One is like a barik powdery one. You can use this one or that one, whichever is suitable. And what you have to do here is you take the Fevicol, okay, and on the green area, on the green part where we have done the green things, you just apply. So there are three different techniques, so I'm showing you all the three different techniques for the pieces. So one is you take the Fevicol and then you just have to sprinkle the moss. I think your moss is a dark green color. Any moss is fine, you can use any moss. And you just sprinkle the moss on top like this. So this is one way. This you use for the mini islands one, okay. And then what you do, you remove all the extra, okay. Second way of doing the same thing, moss thing, is take a paper cup, add some Fevicol, and in that I'm gonna add some moss, and you have that sand also in the kit, that is suji, so you just add a little bit of that as well. And with this you will be adding little bit of the green acrylic paint as well. So I have this green acrylic paint, and again you need ice cream stick, so a little bit of the green acrylic paint, and then you just have to mix it with the moss and the sand. You can take whichever green you want and create this texture with that, so it will look somewhat like this. Okay, now what you have to do is, just suppose you have applied Fevicol here, this is for if you want to add on height in the piece. So what you do, you apply the Fevicol on the surface, and then you break tiny small pieces out of this. Okay, it's very delicate, as you can see the texture, and then what you have to do, simply stick it on the surface. So whichever green you want for your piece to be, you can simply take that and create the texture like this. Okay, so this gives you a one height and also helps you create a nice bushy kind of a texture. So same thing you can do here, and same thing you can do on the either side. Now let's say, suppose I'll show you on this one, ये piece खराब हो गया था इसका lacing में, can you see that blurriness? So that is something that happens when the level is incorrect. Can you see flow दिख रहा है in this, little bit going in that direction? So that happens when the level is incorrect. So make sure you do the leveling correct. So one way of creating the two waves is one wave here and one wave on the back side at the same level. Second way of creating that is, you pour the mixed resin once it reaches the end of the pot life on the back side. Okay, so what you do, pour the resin only on the back side, not on the front side. You can add color also, just like the same way how you have done in the previous piece. So as you can see a tiny step kind of a thing here, and all you have to do is spread it properly, a little more. Same I will be pouring on that piece as well to create a 3D. So now our resin has reached the end of the pot life. So what you will be doing is, you will take the white pigmented resin, and now you will pour the line on this part. Okay, not here, on here. Mix the solution well, and then you pour a nice white line on the edge of the piece. Got it? And then use your hair dryer or a heat gun or a butane torch or a straw. Heat up. And you can see the cells have formed pretty well.